This is the first of what is going to be a continuing event, which is the reciting of many of the highly provocative articles appearing on ignoredpoliticalreality.com. This article is titled, "The Unintended Most Powerful Political Statement of All Time." Well, here we go. Yet another election year begins and the people are being herded into their respective corrals to vote as they are branded to do. The Communist Democrat herd will be given their herders to vote for that will promise more free this and more free that, and all acquired off the sweat of those who do not receive anything free in this world. The globalist Republican herd will be given their herders to vote for that will at least promise not more free stuff but rather a restoration of actual freedom. But the promises made to both herds are nothing more than tainted dried up grass colored to look lush and green. It has no nourishing value to it whatsoever. It is only provided during election years to lure the herds more easily into their respective corrals. What the sheeple never seem to want to think about is, who actually owns those corrals that they so willingly allow themselves to be placed into. It is common knowledge to all those with an IQ level above the digits of their age that the Marxists now enjoy absolute control over the Democrat herd, thus the term Communist Democrat came into being. But the Marxists are only the overseers and herders of the Democrat herd, they do not own it. It is also common knowledge that the Republican herd is totally owned by the financial globalists. What the sheeple fail to see is that the Democrat herd is also owned by the same financial globalists. And the Marxists are only allowed to be the overseers of the Democrat herd in order to create an illusion that there are two actual separate herds. All that anyone needs to look into in order to see that is where does the money come from to fund all those campaigns of the potential herders. Oh, what do you know? It all comes from the same financial group. Although they may vote solidly in that direction, not all members of the Democrat herd are in favor of the immediate destruction of the United States. Many of them are actually patriotic. True, the majority of that herd could care less about America, and all they want is free stuff from the government. Far too ignorant to realize that nothing really comes for free. But they will continually vote for America's speedier end, just to enjoy that free stuff for a while. Those few in the Democrat herd that actually work for a living and actually do possess a pro-America ideology, do not pay any real attention to politics. They chose to leave that burden up to others. But when election times come around, as they were indoctrinated to do, first by their parents and now the younger ones through the Marxist-controlled public education system, they only and always vote nothing more than my school against your school, thinking that politics is just a game and nothing more, as long as their side wins, is all that matters. When they actually do from time to time see what is happening to this country, they go into a voluntary state of denial and blame the other side because it just couldn't be the fault of their side. The Republican herd by nature is the actual patriotic herd. They still believe in America as it was founded to be and lament the loss of all the freedoms that were established by the founders of this nation. They are the workers whose sweat creates the majority of the free stuff enjoyed by the other herd, but through indoctrination, they too are contributors to the demise of America, because just like the Democrat herd, they as well have been fitted with blinders to keep them in line and remaining in the herd. They continually keep electing only those herders placed up for their votes by the party owners. They have been successfully indoctrinated to believe that they have no other choice but to accept those that are given them by the owners. Those in the Republican herd are foolish enough to believe that somehow they can actually take control of the herd themselves, or as the accepted phrase goes, take back the Republican Party. They utterly refuse to understand that no one can take back what they never had control of to begin with. The usual response to that is, oh yes we can, look at Ted Cruz and Rand Paul and a very minute number of others, we can do this. Oh really? Let's say just for argument's sake that the people did succeed in getting their own choices up for election. If those candidates for office were the actual choices of the people and not the owners of the party, how would they get the party to actually fund those candidates? They wouldn't. But let's use Cruz and Paul and that handful of others as an example. The actual owners of America's entire political structure are financial globalists. They deal with numbers 24/7 and are well versed in what they do. They know how to use numbers to their advantage. If the herd is getting restless and appears in danger of stampeding, you calm the herd. where sheeple are concerned. That is accomplished by creating for them a false sense of hope, and doing that will keep the herd in line. Using numbers, the party owns 435 herders in one section of the shearing house, and 100 in another section of the shearing house. So you back and fund a small handful of herders who are actually on the side of the sheeple. You allow them to speak out against the ownership. They're only a handful, so what they say doesn't really matter. They're outnumbered. But just the fact that they are herders that are on the side of the sheeple creates a false sense of hope for the sheeple that they may actually be able to regain their freedom. Thus the sheeple voluntarily remain in the corral. Simple psychology and mathematics combined. Sheeple by nature are pack animals. They require leaders to lead them. The owners provide those leaders. And the herd continues on its way first to multiple shearings, and finally to the slaughterhouse. It's nothing more than that. The fencing around the corrals, although extremely effective, is purely psychological. It doesn't really exist. But the sheeple believe that it does exist, so therefore they voluntarily remain confined in their respective corrals. That psychological fence is the successfully indoctrinated belief that the sheeple cannot successfully go against the financial power of the owners of America's political structure. Therefore they will continue to stay in their respective corrals and voluntarily drink from the troughs that are filled with the Kool-Aid supply to both sides by the owners of the herds. But could they really break free? Most definitely yes. There are approximately 210 million sheeple eligible to vote in this nation. But about 60 million of them could care less about their nation, and they don't even bother to register to vote. That leaves 150 million who are registered. Of that 150 million, the numbers are pretty much even. 50 million in the Communist Democrat herd, 50 million in the Globalist Republican herd, and 50 million who are now officially in the independent category, but are corralled along with the other two herds. About 20% of those in the Communist Democrat herd are not out for free stuff and are actually personally patriotic, but have been indoctrinated to vote strictly for the Communist Democrat herders. About 70% of the globalist Republican herd are still staunchly patriotic and would literally love to see this nation's freedoms restored and preserved. It has also been determined that the majority of the independent group leans heavily pro-America, and would also love to see this nation's freedoms restored and preserved. But a majority could be any amount over 50%, even as low as 51%. But for the sake of this article I will classify those still loyal to this nation as 60%. Now take those percentages and combine them, and what is realized is a pro-America group that numbers approximately 75 million voters. A number of voters that, if united into a financially responsible and pro-Constitution third party, could effectively take control of this nation away from those that presently own this nation's political structure, and thus restore and save this nation. Contrary to indoctrinated belief, a political party does not need to gain 51% to actually be in control. All they need is 30% to stop the destruction of this nation by the present owners of America's political structure. When that destruction is halted, millions more will gain a spine and join the ranks. And then more than 51% control will most definitely be realized. The primary and by far the most successful indoctrination of the herds by the owners is that you can't fight the money, and they have all the money, and they own the entire media as well. Well, the saying always has and always will be true, that if people actually paid attention to history and learned from it, that we would not be as bad off as we are now, because history does repeat itself. People need to look at history. I do not mean all the way back to the fall of Rome that we have now duplicated in every conceivable way. Look back to the 1992 election and what Ross Perot accomplished. Ross Perot was not some staunchly pro-Constitution American. He was a businessman with a vendetta against the Republican side of the party that was in control at that time. They refused to give him a loan that he requested, and as such he set out to get even. With his own money and very little more acquired from donors, he rallied this nation against its owners and may very well have succeeded if he had not suddenly and very abruptly dropped out, claiming he had assessed the situation and determined that he could not win. His sudden dropping out of contention angered millions of people who became so disillusioned that they refused to even vote in that election. And thus the Communist Democrats officially took over control. It was later reported that he dropped out because the lives of his family had been threatened. That was never officially verified and does not really matter anymore. What does matter is just what he was able to accomplish in a very short period of time. It could be done again. And the owners of America's political structure know very well that it could be done again. That is why all of the major pro-America sites, aka Tea Party sites, and even many of the smaller groups are infiltrated with naysayers and defeatists that are there to convince people that they can't fight the money. Some are there because they are placed there to keep the indoctrination solid, but there are many who have been completely indoctrinated and actually wholeheartedly believe that there is nothing that can be done, and thus continue the indoctrination. But take that figure of 75 million who still claim pro-Constitution patriotism. If each and every one of those registered voters would contribute just $20 each, and many could afford to put in much more than that, there would be a political financial war chest of over $1.5 billion created. And therein would lay the financial strength of the American patriots. Also, there now exists a massively powerful tool that Ross Perot never had at his disposal, and that tool is the internet, which could be used relentlessly and effectively. Because more people than ever are getting their news from the internet as opposed to the owned and controlled media. However, the very unfortunate truth is that for most people actual patriotism ends where the wallet begins. The contention is that they will support wholeheartedly the idea of freedom and a restoration of this nation's constitution, but they will only support it with their thoughts and nothing more. So the indoctrination fences will remain, and the sheeple will continue to whine and complain and look for more leaders. That will of course happily be supplied by the owners. And by continually drinking the Kool-Aid supplied by the owners, they will continue to believe that they can somehow take back what they never had to begin with. Thus the unintended most powerful political statement of all time was made by Albert Einstein, and will forever hold true, and that is, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again expecting a different result. To get a visualization of what Americans could actually accomplish if they truly wanted to accomplish it, look here on YouTube and watch the absolute greatest inaugural address that could ever be imagined. It just might inspire enough people to finally get the fortitude necessary to band together in earnest and act upon their expressed desires to claim this nation back from those who have purchased it. Thank you for watching, and please check out all the other videos on this site as well. And if you like them, subscribe to this channel, because there are definitely more like these on the way.